In order to facilitate an experience where every voice is heard, you'll see that our dialogue format follows a very specific process. We're going to have these sort of bigger session groups where we're all in a room together. These rooms are sometimes 20 people like today, sometimes we've had up to 150 before. But it's really an experience where, although it's a large room, we are all paying attention exquisitely and we're listening and we look for where the voice is coming through. And so we want to invite you when we are in these larger spaces, if as you're listening, something really sparks, excites, resonates with you, there is a piece of wisdom or a piece of experience that you would like to bring, please just pop your hands up so that we can see you and so that we can welcome your voice into the space. This big space is really a way of us precipitating a particular discussion. And we then take this thinking, and our lived experiences into smaller and more intimate spaces where we can each have our voice heard and where we can think well together. And so in our breakaway room spaces, we usually five or six, sometimes up to when there's really large group, sometimes up to 8 or 10. But in those breakaway rooms, if we can just ask that again, we each pay attention to the equality of voice, that every person has an opportunity to share their thoughts, their experience, their wisdom, and to bring their voice to the room so that we are all seen, heard, and loved. So that's a little bit of the housekeeping done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just ask Aziz, first of all, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit around why we've chosen today's topic specifically, what it is that we're wanting to celebrate, but also why we believe this is such an important topic. And as with so many of our topics, something that warrants ongoing conversation. But Aziz, if you can just share, what is it that makes this concept of celebrating Mother Africa so important?
Thank you, Robin. I would like just to renew my pleasure and happiness to having all of you here with us. And of course, the choice of the topic, of course, is self-evident. Everyone knows why mothers should be celebrated, not just in Africa, but around the world. But we specifically know that African moms have some special, qualities and values. We tend to believe this based on our experience. But at the same time, we know that each one of us, every individual, no matter where they are on earth, they owe a lot to their moms. They owe their success. They owe first their existence, their being here on earth to their moms, and their success, of course, to their moms. And we know that the role or the pivotal role of women in our lives as a whole, especially in educating all of us, is very, very critical and crucial. So we chose that topic first to celebrate, to show the importance and the critical role and the crucial contribution of women and the moms, especially in our lives, and to what extent they mean a lot to us. So the meaning of a mom or of a woman, or the presence of a woman in our lives is huge. So that's number one. We wanted all of us to just pay tribute to those women, whether they're moms or sisters or friends or whoever they have been, who have contributed to what we are today. So pay them tribute and give them a voice to speak up as well, if possible. But at the same time, as I said, once in discussing the choice of the topic with the whole team, it is also important not to overshadow or to overlook the barriers and the challenges that women across the world, and especially in Africa, are running through or are facing in the daily challenges that they have. So navigating the challenges to provide for their families or to help their kids or offspring or husbands or whoever they are working with to help them succeed in this life. So the setbacks are enormous, and we would like also to meditate these challenges and these setbacks and see to what extent we can contribute somehow from where we are, at least by amplifying their voices in this platform. So amplifying the voices of those women and share how those barriers and setbacks are holding women or holding our moms. And if they are holding women and holding our moms, they are holding our own success. Because without them being able to move forward, we as well we would be set back, and we will be impeded on our way towards whatever we want to achieve. So I hope that you will engage with us in this conversation. As you can see, Africa Voices Dialogue is mainly about having a dialogue and giving voice to everyone, so amplifying the voices of everyone. So focusing on the opportunities, as I said, highlighting those opportunities that we may have, because from your side, from your experiences, you may be seeing some opportunities that might not be visible to everyone, but at the same time, also highlighting those barriers or challenges that we see in front of us and explain or express how we could probably contribute to avoiding those barriers. Thank you, Robin, and back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aziz. So yeah, I think really today what we are interested in doing is having a very open discussion and a real thinking space around the role that women do play, not only should play, but in fact do play and could play, um, if we were able to really liberate the full potential that is present for women on the continent. And we really want to think about, yes, not only the role of the intimate family role, but actually what are the inspirations that women bring? How do women contribute in their own unique ways? How are women recognized? How do we really witness and celebrate the way in which women contribute to our continent? And how do we intentionally open up, witness, articulate, and amplify those stories and create a powerful sense of movement around unleashing the potential of all of us for the continent? Jenna, I'd love to just introduce you quickly and ask for your resonances. And what we'd also like to do is invite everybody to please just jot your thoughts. So as we're talking, please jot your thoughts into the chat. And once Jenna Lee has shared a little bit around what she sees the role of women on our continent as being, and how she believes we can really celebrate, witness, and amplify not only them, but actually that role. We'll also listen in for a few voices from all of you. And so just briefly to share, to introduce Jenna Lee and to invite her to share her thoughts. So Jenna Lee Strugnell is an amazing person doing some incredible work that's very aligned with Africa Voices Dialogue's work. She really is interested in creating spaces where people are seen and heard, where there is an opportunity for open and engaged conversation. And she does this through the organization which she co-founds and of which she's the executive director, which is called Tales of Turning. I'm going to allow her to introduce it a little bit herself, and then she will talk to us in a bit of detail a little bit later on. But for the moment, if I can just ask you, Jenna Lee, yeah, for your thoughts on our topic today.
Thanks so much, Robin, and for the introduction. And it's really a great privilege to be here with all of you. So thanks so much for having me. So there are many things that resonate. I'm really excited about this topic, and I'll go a bit more into why during my presentation a little bit later on. But it's really acknowledging the role that women play in education and in Africa, and amplifying these alternative stories, these different ways of being in the world, and really celebrating them. I come from a psychology and narrative therapy approach. And a lot about narrative therapy is about celebration, celebrating the sparkling moments, the moments that are working, and celebrating individuals that are doing things differently. And then also the witnessing is very important. In narrative therapy, we have an outsider witnessing process, where is it when you share your story, what comes back to you from the world? So, as we know, many times, women in education and mothers, the great contribution that they make is not always acknowledged and seen. So this is a really a beautiful way to do that, and to amplify this, and really to acknowledge the role women are playing. And then, as was mentioned previously, it's really important to acknowledge the barriers and the issues we're facing, but often we focus on that. And this is a beautiful way of looking at building hope-based narratives, which is where we also look at emphasizing what we want to see in the world and the people that are already doing that, and how do we support them and amplify that. So that's I'll go a bit more deeper into that later, but thanks so much. That's what really excites me and resonates with me from this session.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenna Lee. And so, may I just ask if there is anybody else who really would like to share some thoughts on this topic? It's a massive, massive topic, and there are a million routes that we could go. But just if we could have some of your voices coming into the room to share with us what it is that feels relevant for you, what has been sparked for you by this topic, what you are hoping we will discuss, and also we 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 did have quite a hefty. Those of us who know Africa Voices Dialogue well know that we do quite intensive RSVP forms, and there's a very specific reason for that, and it's because we believe that generative dialogue is an extraordinarily powerful research tool and an extraordinarily powerful reflective tool. And so when we ask people to sign up for our sessions, we want them to start thinking way in advance about some of the issues that spark for them. And so just if you can recall, we will look at some of the RSVP responses, but thank you, Fiston. See, you put your hand up. So if you'd like to just kick us off, and then we'll go to you, Gugu.
Thanks, Robin. Actually, not really kicking us off, because I'd just like to echo what is already said. When I look at the topics like this, I go further into history, and I look at my upbringing and how I was raised, and who were there for me. And I'm always urged to say, anytime there's a dialogue around the influence of women into Africans learning, Africans education, or parenting on itself. I would love to, I'm always interested to look at the figures that have immensely impacted the African history positively, and who writes those stories, and how are those stories shared, across the continent. Who are the people behind the papers and the pens, and who are the people that listen to that? And I'm very interested to how that's written, and the structure of it, and the politics behind it, and how further do these stories go, and how much do we come about knowing the legacy of these extraordinary women teaching us. Because I could go. It's a huge topic, and very interesting. I really want to echo what was already said. I think it's important in spaces like this, we really go further into history, and we'll look at the histories that are still alive today, and the people who are still stepping in and stepping up to echo and impact as positively, and how is that in our Africanness being taught or being shared? That's all I had to echo.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Fiston. Gugu.
Yes. So thank you so much for this platform, because sometimes I feel like I'm working alone here in KZN, and the stuff that I'm bringing is not understood. I grew up here in KZN, but all my adult life was in Joburg, and I learned so much. I come from a consciousness coaching background and counseling background. And now coming back here in the rural areas, working with the rural kids and schools as well, it's so challenging to see how much is not being done. So what we are doing here is I'm working with different organizations or different people. Yeah, like the previous weekend we had a Girl Guides camp. So we bring back the Girl Guides and the Boy Scouts, which wasn't, it had died down here. It is active in other urban areas, but in the rural areas, I am seeing that it can really help. And there's a guy in town who has what do you call this, butterfly dome. He breeds butterflies and all of that, and he has spiders and all of those things. So I take the kids to go and experience. So I'm introducing experiential learning, because theory is not working. And especially when the curriculum is being taught in English and they are very staunchly Zulu, and they don't really understand. So, our practical learning is really important. So bring it back to our kids. You can see the light shining, you can see them understanding it differently. And again, I have been collecting toys, and I've opened a play school for the young ones. I mean, when they see a toy, when they see these bright colors, you can see their eyes shining, because they've never seen a toy in their life. And now they don't just play with the toys, it's educational. That's why I call it a play school. So we get to play with them. It's a different way of doing things. And reading as well, I read to them out loud, and I'm teaching others to do the same to the kids.
Been rapture here.
Yes, we can hear you say. You can keep going.
Yes. When it comes home, and she has to take care of her kids and her husband too, and in most of the time, sometimes we're not satisfied with, her achievement and the result. I think we have to pay tribute to women for the big achievement work they do. Here in Morocco, for instance, we know that women are still fighting. Fighting or leading a civic fight to gain more freedom. And for just giving information about the reform taking place in Morocco, in Morocco we have what we call the family status. Just like laws, regulatory, rules that specifically regulate the, and give some specific rights to women. There's reforms going on in Morocco to provide more freedom to women, which means that women in Morocco are still fighting to gain more freedom, to get that, equity with their colleagues, the men. I want to get back to the issue of education and another issue in business, especially in microfinance. And we take the example of Morocco. The question is, why, women succeed in education? Why sometimes they are more effective in learning compared to men? This is one question. And the second question is, in microfinance, we have discovered through research that women, when they, asking for debt and money, credit, they pay back at a rate of more exceeding 90%. They are successful in paying back the money compared to men. So here there's two questions here. Why is it that women are so effective, in their, achievement? Why they are highly achievable compared to men? My guess, let me just give an answer. Probably, I don't know if I be right in this or not, but I believe that women, when it comes to education, maybe they're working more with their heart. I believe that emotional connection, has something to do with. And neuroscientists has proved that the emotional trigger is responsible for transformation, behavior transformation. So I think when you're teaching with heart, this is maybe the learning part in education. When you're teaching with heart, with passion, with love, so probably you're connecting with your students. Well, in their case, it's not students, but your kids, and probably you have that impact you produce on your students. When it comes to microfinance, it's still we still find, the issue of the heart, but here I relate it to the values. And I believe that women are maybe they sensitive to values in men. And maybe you agree with me or not, we know that
Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I am so excited to be part of this meeting, basically because I love women, and I've seen the impact of how women just change perspectives of even the mindset. I'm going to talk about how women are great encouragers. That's something that I've come to notice. Women have a potential of just uplifting your spirit. And I'm speaking from a personal experience of being raised by a mother who's an educator. She was a teacher. And I noticed how even when my grades were not good, she believed in me and she would encourage me. And that's just one example I'm giving. So I'm just here to raise my voice on saying, I've seen something special about women as they're the best encouragers. They can literally shift your mindset. So thank you, Robin, and I'm glad to be part of this call.
Thank you, Grace. Really lovely to have you with us and hope that you will stay with us. Wonderful. So what we'll do briefly is just have a quick look and respark our thinking again at what came through from the RSVP questions. So these questions form the most incredible reflective template for our conversations. And I hope that what they also do, we hope that what they also do is start to trigger thinking. Because the thinking that happens as a self-reflective tool, and when we bring that self-reflective thinking into our collective reflecting, really does offer an opportunity to step into different ways of being, different ways of thinking, different ways of telling, different ways of witnessing, and different ways of sharing. And that really is the essence of this concept of generative dialogue. Not talking for the sake of talking, but talking to really deepen both our own thinking and experience and choices, and also our collective thinking and experiences and choices. So just very quickly, a couple of things out of our RSVP forms that were really interesting. So firstly, on the question around, at a very intimate personal level, who are the women who've most influenced each of our individual learning? It is, again, fascinating to see that it's often in these intimate spaces. Now, this doesn't relegate women to the intimate space, but I think that what it does show is the importance of that intimate relationship of support and care and how much difference it makes to our capacity to learn. And, to think beyond the role of mother as mother, but actually the role of the carer who sees to the needs of those that she is caring for in order to liberate them for learning. So it was really interesting. More than half cited their mothers or a very close family member as the person most influential. Then colleagues and peers. So again, interestingly, teachers slightly beneath, and it's not a massive sample. I think we had about 45 RSVPs. It's not a massive sample, but it's interesting. but teachers actually slightly less than colleagues and peers. So again, this sort of the teacher's wonderful, but this added level of really caring about another person's learning and the difference that that makes. And then a smaller percentage really around the inspirational individuals, role models who have given something to aspire to. And then there was a question around how do we witness and acknowledge that? And this is just something to spark our conversation a little bit later on about thinking about not only what the story is, but how we witness the story, how we see the alternative stories that are present. Um, and so, a lot of us said that personal thanks and public acknowledgement were important ways of expressing and witnessing what women had done in our learning journeys. Then there was almost equally this giving something back to the individual, paying it forward, so giving something forward to other individuals and living into the legacy that we've witnessed. Then some of the ways that we noticed. So this came out of the question: how have the women in your experience or in your lives that you've witnessed and seen in your own communities? What is it that they've been doing that has actually contributed towards how learning is happening? And so this is just a distillation of all of these responses. But to lean into Gugu's comment, so often it is the women who notice the need and who respond to the need and who make stuff happen in a community where otherwise that need would go unmet. So they become the social entrepreneurs and activists that start up. It doesn't necessarily need to be at scale. It might be a small feeding project, a small early childhood learning center, but they notice and they create the solutions for those challenges. Practical and financial support. Many people spoke about women in their communities who financially supported them in their education or who practically supported them. Witnessing and having faith in children and young people's possibilities. So just having faith, knowing that somebody believes in you is so powerful. These aspirational examples of courage, the mentorship, care, emotional support. Then, of course, they're the women who really are teachers and educators and fulfill that role in a particular way. They're those who are advocates and champions who stand up for young learners. Others who support learning, the conditions for learning to take place. So they may be looking not only at the exact learning environment, but all the things surrounding that: food, healthcare, water, provisioning, clothing, etc., that actually allow for a young person to learn. They open up networks and create opportunities. They support conversation and dialogue. They even support and advocate for shifts in policy. And then, interestingly, women as disciplinarians who actually help young people to stay the course. And then finally, and after this, we're going to go into a little breakaway room. I'm hoping that your thinking has been sparked. But finally, what was really interesting was looking at how many examples. So from a SNAP survey of a relatively small percentage, small proportion of people, to see the recognition of the role that women-led organizations which support women, play in the continent is huge. And I think this is so useful because if we were to spend even a little while really looking for those stories and articulating and expressing them and starting to see what already is and how we can support what already is, I think that our narrative might shift a little bit just through doing that. So that's our quick RSVP recap. There was a lot more in there, but I had a lot less time than I needed to capture it all. We're going to invite ourselves now into a little bit more of an intimate space. So we're going to go into our breakaway rooms, and for everybody who's new, I'm sure you will find yourself in a room with people who've been in Africa Voices dialogue sessions many times, and they will support you through our breakaway space. And so our request to each of us as we go into these smaller, intimate thinking spaces together is that we really bring that open mind, open heart, open will into our conversations. If it's possible, please keep your videos on. We know that sometimes bandwidth makes that difficult, so it's fine if it does. One or two of us can't speak, so please contribute in the chat. But apart from that, if we could just ensure that in our breakaway spaces, we give enough time and we pay attention to everybody's voice being heard. And so bring your voice and contribute it, but don't hog the space, please. A little bit, and then invite somebody else. Be intentional about inviting another voice. Um, Pay attention to the equality of voice and thought. And then if you could just not necessarily note take, but just take note of what is landing for you, what's distilling, what's really becoming clearer for you in that room. We would love to go into a discussion when we come back from. Okay.
I
All right.
missed that, Robin. What was it?
No, I was just saying before we hand over to Jenna Lee, if there's anything that struck somebody that they'd like to share out of the conversations that they had in their room. I
We
think
were with Akuba. We were with Akuba in the room, and she did mention something at the very very last minute. I think we were 30 seconds close to being pulled back in the main session, and she asked a question related to African, like the history of African women, and she said she went to Ghana because she's so much interested in um, herbs. I think in the very colonial time, term that would be called traditional medicine, stuff like that. She asked the question of a specific herb in Ghana and want to know like the Ghanaian name and the history behind that herbs. And she was struck to find out that there was no history. I said, "Oh yeah, this same thing happened. It actually happens every day. There's a lot of stuff that we know in English and French and Swahili and many other languages. And the truth is, there's a huge history behind this, but we don't know that. The question is, where is this history? Why did it get erased? Where do we find it? How do we learn it? If you go to South Africa, I look at South Africa as a whole hub of history. There's too much stored there. My question goes, how do we get access to that? If we get access to that, how do organizations like AVD, like Lib Institute, like Ubuntu, making sure that those stories are being passed down to people like us, to people that are younger than me, to people who are 5 years old now. Okay. And don't get me wrong, we are celebrating African women and their influence into our learning. As he shared about the mother, I think maybe each one of us could share the history or the experiences we have with women, our mothers. I'm a huge testament of what women's influence in learning is actually. I'm in Canada today because there's been a big force coming from women. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm studying, enjoying the Canadian weather. Yes, I think what's interesting me is you go to Africa, well, at least my experience in Africa, you know about what, is Wangari Maathai, but you don't know about this very local woman who's working tooth and nail also to do the almost exact thing that Wangari Maathai did, but whose story is not known.
yeah.
And hey, that story should be the story that a 5 year old, 8 years old, or 9 year old learns when they're learning about heroism.
Yeah.
So here's to you, educators. How is that being done? Or do we simply follow the colonial, curriculum or formal curriculum, right? And something else, I'm finishing. I look at my age. and the generation I'm in, okay, and I look at this upcoming age, let's say the Gen Zs and the millennials, and the generation, is it Alpha? I don't know the name. We have so much knowledge and presence and visibility in social media, right? And if you look at that angle very, very well, we are the tech disruptors. We know so much. We are there. We can use that to publicize anything. Okay. Here are the dangers. On the social media, I dare you, go there and find me stories where a girl is talking positively about the influence of both males and females. Okay. And find a boy who is celebrating females and males at the same time. There's too much conflict. You'd find a guy like me saying, I don't need a woman to be okay, to live. Okay? And you find a girl my age saying she doesn't need a man to be okay, to live. I see that being a problem in Africa. We don't need that. We need an education that will celebrate all these two people all together because they're all heroes. And that can only be done, through spaces like this, through Ubuntu's, through Copave, through Bramble, when we are disseminating, doing our services. Let this person see what heroism really means through you. Don't teach them that you have to die for your country for you to be a hero. Teach them about all these local activities, local actions being done by women, and say, this is true heroism. And let's teach them about histories of Africa. There's too much that I would love to discharge here. I wouldn't have time. So thank you.
Thank you, Fiston. And I love that. And I think this is it. So how do we create heroes in our own backyards that help us become better human beings? That seeing what's possible is within our grasp and aspirational, but not so. We haven't amplified. We haven't made a story of it that makes it impossible to achieve. We've made a story of it that is real, that is next door, and that is a choice of a way of being that our children can see as well, and we can see, and we can step into. Haruna?
Thank you so much. I think that this platform is something that we need to cultivate and we need to champion, because in Africa, we have a lot of heroic women's industry. Like in Niger, we had Saronia Mongu, which is a lady that protects his own localities against the colonialism that came into Dogonduchi.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to check, Robin, can you see my presentation all right on the screen? Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much once again. It's really a privilege to be here with you all, and I've learned so much already from what everyone shared and the dialogues in the breakout room. So it's a great honor to be here. So as I've mentioned, my background is in psychology, narrative therapy, and then peace building. The other two directors of the organization are very experienced conflict mediators. So they have worked with gang wars, taxi wars, election violence. They're very involved in the transition out of apartheid and the Peace Accord. So that's a bit of background on our organization, which is called Tales of Turning. And we are leveraging social media and technology to address different social issues. So we look at peace building, we look at gender-based violence prevention, we look at early childhood development, and we're really trying to amplify the impact of the incredible work that has been done in these sectors. And today, fitting with the theme, I wanted to speak a bit more about the narrative therapy approach that we take. So we see people as the experts of their own lives with the skills and knowledge to influence their problems. We facilitate processes where individuals and communities share their knowledge to create new narratives. So in our daily lives, we all have numerous different experiences that we're trying to make meaning of and to make sense of. And this meaning making, it takes the forms of stories. So stories consist of events that are linked in sequence across time. And then we try to make sense of them, and this sense making then becomes the plot of the story. And the narrative is the thread that's linking all these different events together. And the effects of these narratives and this meaning making is not neutral in our lives. It shapes the present moment, and it also shapes the future. So we have stories about our abilities, about our relationships, about our communities, and this shapes how we interact with the world. So there is a danger in having a single story with a thin description, because this leaves little room for the complexities of life. It restricts people's expression of their own stories and their own unique knowledge, and it prevents people from being seen and heard. Dominant stories are usually created by the people who hold power in a particular context. So I think this relates a lot about what we're talking about today, about seeing and hearing the voices of women and mothers and women in education, and why sometimes these stories are not seen and heard. And then why I shared at the beginning why this topic really resonates with me is because it opens up the possibility for us to talk about alternative stories. And already I've heard so much of this today, which really excites me. So alternative stories are events that don't fit in with the dominant story and that remain untold and unrecognized. So these are the exceptions to the dominant story that are often less visible. And with this approach, we ask curious questions like today, how these really powerful questions have been asked to reauthor our stories and to create space for change and for new possibilities. So when we ask these curious questions and listen very closely, like Robin has spoken often about, paying attention to people when they're speaking, this opens up for new possibilities, new stories, new ways of being. And with looking at stories, it's very important to look at the broader social context. So we're all in different contexts, and the way in which we understand our lives is influenced by the broader stories of the context in which we live. This includes gender, race, class, culture, age, and identity. So we need to position the stories that we're telling in that context to truly understand them. And with that, with understanding motherhood, I think it's so. When I founded Tales of Turning, we were working with mothers, which was really, really extraordinary. And we were working in this narrative therapy way, where we would have circles of women and they would share their stories with each other. So it really opened up the space for mothers to share their wisdom with each other. And instead of coming there, obviously, we facilitated the process, and we had on add-on skills and training and all of that. But the mothers really learned from each other. So instead of going there and saying you have to parent in a certain way, the mothers would share how they felt when they were parented and why they're parenting this way, and have really robust dialogues from it. And then the knowledge sharing and the wisdom that was shared amongst the mothers was really, really extraordinary. And then this then brings me to the importance of documenting knowledge in narrative therapy. So it's a really amazing way of weaving together people's knowledge and then sharing it with others so that they can then learn from that knowledge. And a really amazing example of this is that we did a gender-based violence prevention training with around 40 community-based organizations. And we know community-based organizations and the individuals that are working there are really on the forefront of the issues in their community. And with gender-based violence, they're really on the forefront of preventing gender-based violence and supporting survivors. So you can imagine when we were doing this training, the incredible knowledge that was in the room. So we started off with people sharing their stories and their knowledge, and then we weave this together, and we then use social media to amplify the impact. So this could be shared with other communities within South Africa, within Africa, and within the globe. So it helps to amplify impact. And it's where, firstly, of course, you need to acknowledge the problem. It's always important to acknowledge the problem. But then you look at what are steps we can take to what is the vision we want to get to. So what are these sparkling moments? What are these alternative stories, the ways that women are doing things differently in education? And then what are the steps that we can take to get there, where these stories are seen and heard? So a lot in our images, like when we create social media content, instead of putting there what we don't want to see, often if people are creating content about gender-based violence or violence, they will put an image there that's showing violence. Instead of that, we will put, if we're creating content about fatherhood, we'll show men positively interacting with their children. And it's really incredible because there's a lot of neuroscience behind this. So we're helping rewire people's brains and show them the small action steps that they can take to create this different world. And when we all start doing that, it becomes something very, very powerful. So thanks so much. And thanks so much for listening and for your time.
Thank you, Jenny Lee. That was just amazing, and it's really, really exciting to be able to partner. And I think what we are discovering, what is really exciting at this point in time with our Africa Voices dialogue work, is actually the number of partnerships that are coming through, where there's such strong alignment. There's a real sense of amplifying this way of being and connecting across many different nodes, both on the continent, but also off the continent, to really create that positive spiral. And it is so neuroscientifically and from an experiential point of view, it is very, very powerful, the power of collective intent around what we represent and how we show up in the world and what the stories are that we tell. And it's very powerful to become intentional about that, because there really is this upward vortex that happens when we lean into that. And by the same token, and we know how powerful media is and what it does to us when we are just bombarded over and over again with these really difficult, negative stories, how it just creates a really vicious cycle. So the invitation is to us collectively, but really to us also individually and in our own collective spaces outside, to practice and just step into more powerful alternative narratives. And so we're not going to go into a breakaway room because we're not many of us, and I think it would be really nice to hear all of the voices that are in our spaces. But I'll share with you just what the questions are, and we can step into. I'll have to shoot through these slides quickly. Actually, let me do this. Okay. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting on the basis of what Jenny Lee has shared with us, for us just to take a moment and to think it through. Maybe we can take 30 seconds or so just to think about what are the dominant narratives that are present, that are making it difficult for us to witness and acknowledge how women do influence learning. And obviously there are all the classical ones, but I'd be really interested for us to start thinking about some of the less obvious things that make it hard to really tell that story and see that story, and what might happen if we start framing things differently. And then, for a second for a second round to maybe think through this piece so super practically in your very own space, and for us to land it into our own lived experience. What are the things that we might do that would help us to be not only more aware of, but actually intentionally celebrate and share the narratives of how women contribute? So let's go into an open discussion now. I think we're small enough to be able to do that without breaking away. And let's just take 30 seconds to think, and then let's start a conversation.
Robin, while everyone's thinking, I posted the link to the WhatsApp group in the chat. It would be lovely if anyone wants to join. We have regular dialogues there. We share resources. We share unbranded social media content that can be used to spark dialogue. So it's in the chat, and if anyone would like to join, that would be wonderful.
Fantastic. Thank you.